Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, today we're uncorking something a bit different. Usually when people talk health benefits in wine, it's all about one color, isn't it? Red.
Oh, absolutely. Red wine gets all the press,
Yeah.
resveratrol, the tannins.
Yeah,
It's definitely hogged the spotlight for ages.
totally. But we found this really interesting article. It's kind of a mix, personal stories, but also some science. And it makes this argument that maybe white wine's been, well, overlooked. It wants to uncork the truth, as it says, about its own good points.
Yeah, so our goal here in this deep dive is really to pull out the key insights, the science bits, from this source. We want to equip you, basically, with the main points so you're up to speed on white wine's perks, the ones maybe you hadn't thought about.
Right. So the article just dives right in, doesn't it? Challenges that only red is healthy idea. It starts with white wines, its own kind of power.
hmm And what's interesting, the source really emphasizes that white wine does have its own pretty impressive antioxidant stuff going on. Even though it doesn't have all those tannins like red wine, it's not like it's empty-handed benefit-wise.
Okay, so it's not just red wine light. What are these compounds then? The article mentions some names I don't hear as often.
Definitely less famous. It talks about things like tyrosol and hydroxytyrosol. Different from resveratrol, sure, but the article says they're pretty important.
And what do they actually do, according to the source anyway?
Well, the article explains their main job is helping fight oxidative stress, down at the cell level. They help keep cells healthy, have anti-inflammatory effects, and they deliver polyphenols, too, which are, generally good for well-being. The source even mentions that the way white wine is fermented actually helps keep these compounds intact.
That's interesting. So it has its own sort of molecular magic. Okay, good start. Let's shift gears a bit from the tiny stuff to something bigger, heart health. The article was a pretty striking claim here.
It really does. The source suggests that drinking white wine moderately gives you cardiovascular benefits
Yeah.
that can, and it uses the word rival red wine, which, yeah, that definitely pushes back against what most people think.
Rival red wine. Wow, yeah, that's quite something. How does the source back that up?
It points to the phenolic compounds in white wine, says they help keep blood vessels working well, and might even help with cholesterol profiles.
And didn't it mention a specific study, something from University of Connecticut?
Yes, exactly. It references that study specifically,
Yeah.
and it quotes the finding. White wine seemed just as effective as red wine for heart health, but a key qualifier in moderation.
Right, I remember that quote. They had one from Dr. Deepak Das, didn't they, from their research center. He said, for blood vessel health, white wine is as effective as red wine. That's pretty strong backing in the article.
It really is. It underlines the source's whole point that heart benefits aren't just a red wine thing. But, and the article is super clear on this, we need to emphasize this for you too, the absolute key is moderation.
Oh, absolutely. The source defines it, right. Up to 1 glass a day for women, up to 2 for men. Sticking within that is vital if you want these potential upsides without, the downsides of too much alcohol.
hmm And then moving away from the pure science for a sec, the source brings up some practical pluses white wine often has.
Like calories. Yeah, people definitely think about that.
Exactly. The article notes white wine typically has fewer calories than red. Gives figures like around 120 for a 5-ounce white, maybe 125, 130 for red. It's not a massive difference per glass, but the article kind of suggests, hey, if you drink it regularly, it adds up.
Makes sense. Every little bit counts if you're tracking. What about sensitivities? You know how some people react badly to red wine?
Yeah, this is a big one. The article explains white wine is often gentler. Why? Mainly because it has way fewer tannins. Tannins are often the culprit, the source suggests, behind those wine headaches or flushing some folks get.
So the idea is if red gives you a headache, white might be okay because of the lower tannins. Is that what the article's getting at?
That's the connection it makes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it also mentions fewer histamines, generally, in white wine. That can also make it easier for some people to tolerate. It does point out, though, white wine isn't usually sulfite-free, but overall, the chemical mix seems less likely to cause issues for some sensitive people.
Okay. Now, there was this really interesting bit in the article that kind of connects old traditions with, well, modern ideas, digestion and even stress.
Yes. It talks about that historical thing, how in some cultures, people traditionally drank wine, especially dry whites, with their meals, like a digestive helper.
Yeah, like that nice little story about the Italian grandma insisting on a small glass with dinner. She thought it helped digestion.
Exactly that anecdote. And the article tries to link that tradition to maybe some science. It suggests the natural acids in dry whites could maybe stimulate gastric juices, help the digestive process along, kind of like how our own stomach acids work.
Huh, that makes a certain kind of sense, like giving your digestion a little nudge. And then from the physical, the article pivots to the mental side, stress reduction.
Right. It explores how just the act, the ritual of sitting down and slowly sipping a glass of wine can encourage mindfulness. That deliberate pause, it suggests, can shift you out of that constant fight or flight mode into something more relaxed.
And it mentioned something about cortisol levels possibly dipping.
Temporarily.
Yeah, the source notes that moderate alcohol intake might cause a temporary drop in cortisol. That's the stress hormone. And lowering that, even just for a bit, is generally seen as a good thing, especially if stress is, a chronic issue.
Building on that whole ritual idea, the article makes this really compelling point that maybe the biggest benefit isn't just the chemistry in the glass, but the actual mindset it encourages, slowing down.
Totally. I thought that was really insightful. The source says dedicating that moment to a glass of wine can be a powerful, moment of pause. Life is so rushed, so this intentional act forces you or helps you be present.
It's like the wine becomes this little anchor. You're not just knocking it back. You're supposed to taste it, smell it, be with it. And that mindful way of doing it, as the source says, naturally makes you drink slower, more intentionally, which is just a healthier way to consume alcohol anyway compared to, chugging it.
Plus, you can't ignore the social side. Sharing wine with people, that connection. The article reminds us that social connection itself has huge health benefits, right? Longer lives, less depression risk.
Real documented stuff.
Definitely. So to wrap things up practically, the source offers some tips on how to, maximize any potential benefits.
And it really hammers home. Quality matters just as much as quantity. Not all white wine is the same.
Precisely. The advice is generally go for drier whites, less processed ones. They're probably more likely to have those beneficial compounds compared to, say, super sweet ones or mass market stuff with lots of additives.
And temperature matters. The article seemed to think so. Surprisingly specific.
It did. Advises serving it properly chilled, 45 to 55 Fahrenheit, roughly. The idea is that helps keep the wine structure and those compounds intact. Too cold, you lose flavor. Too warm, maybe lose some benefits. And circling back to that traditional wisdom, pairing it with food is really important.
Oh yeah, the source strongly recommends that. Eating, especially food with some protein or fat, dramatically slows down how fast alcohol hits your bloodstream, lets your body process it more gently. It's just a smarter, healthier habit, rooted in tradition but backed by science.
So it feels like the takeaway is, yeah, red wine earned its health halo, but this deep dive into the source material really shows white wine as this quiet contender. It offers its own unique benefits backed by some science, according to this article, that we often just ignore.
Totally. From its own antioxidants, potential heart perks the source claims can rival reds, being gentler sometimes, maybe helping digestion, promoting that mindfulness. White wine definitely deserves maybe a fresh look in the whole health discussion.
Yeah, it seems that the article's final point is that white wine isn't just a summer sipper. If you enjoy it intentionally, stick to moderation, choose decent quality, and have it with good food and ideally good company, it can absolutely fit into a balanced lifestyle.
Which brings us to that final thought for you, the listener. Considering this blend of tradition and the science presented in the source, how does your own experience or your understanding of wine line up with this? Or challenge it? Definitely something to ponder maybe next time you pour a glass.